Greetings. Hi, I'm Amy. Also, what is happening? Thank you to all the subscribers. It's like something's happening. So thank you for your subscribing, watching, sharing. Okay. Today is going to be about the giant trees. Because, okay, we can talk about all the other stuff. We can, when it comes to the other one that is up there, besides Sibyls and the great prophetesses, are the trees. The giant trees. And I don't mean like giant trees. I mean huge, gargantuan trees that had to be at least as tall as like the Empire State Building. So they say, I think taller than that, far taller than that. And then I just took a trip to northern Washington coast. And I have a theory about all the coasts. I think all the coasts used to have giant trees or some kind of pyramids or mounds. Because it was all indigenous peoples, and not just indigenous people, but highly intelligent peoples. Because there is this mountain that we're passing, and I'm thinking, here it is in plain sight, and is anyone paying attention to this very unique looking mountain that actually had like poles coming out of it to let water out? I was like, what are those doing there? And then you see these like notches and swirls on the side. Well, if you look at, I'll post some pictures in my community, because I have some old pieces of I think it's pine or it's oak wood where the bark has fallen off, and then you see these notches and holes inside of these pieces of wood. Now, there are critters that have made those holes. Some of those holes are made by woodpeckers. Some of those holes are made by what are called earwigs or pincher bugs. And then, but the knots that are coming out, that's the tree, right? Then, specifically where I'm at, and then I'm pretty sure you can probably go all over the earth and actually come back to this theory. Possible conclusion. This is kind of my conclusion, because I've showed you pictures of the two giant tree stumps that are there. Well, from some aerial views, there look like there were some more trees, but they're not so evident because they could have been older, or maybe they were smaller. But the name of this land used to mean fallen down tree, or fallen tree pieces. And we have an Ashland here, and there's some more names that basically relate to the trees. But there's a stone here called shale, and I'll take some pictures of that too. And I'm pretty positive that's the bark from these trees, because these trees fell down. I mean, either way they fell, there'd be tons of bark, right? And then, yes, it becomes petrified. And this is my theory about the Great Pyramids and some of the ancient things that were built. I think they were actually carved from wood and then petrified, because wood swells when it gets wet. And that would make it to where you couldn't fit like a paper through any of these. And how do they get them in the middle of nowhere? Well, I think sound was used, and I think, yes, I think we had technology. I think we, as I talk about the elements, I think we are the elements. I think we are who, you know, not myself, maybe myself in a past life, you know, avatar being, but I'm theorizing the download is that it was elementals that were basically baddies, that maybe not baddies, but that laser cut down these trees moved rocks. Those are earth elementals. And then you have air elementals, you have water elementals. You get all these elementals together, you can move all kinds of things. Okay, back to the trees. If there were giant trees and all this information, then what are we missing here? Because this isn't even talked about. Like, oh my gosh. And then, you know, I did those videos about air, and I'm, you know, showing the trails, and then they have to put something saying that these are condensation trails. If that was so true, why would you need to put that information in there? There wouldn't be any questioning about it. It's so frustrating. And so these type of things, like, are there going to be anthropologists, archaeologists, and geologists? I mean, where are the geologists that are like me, that want to understand, how is this possible? How is it possible that we have a piece of petrified wood that is now a rock, but we're not equating this to anything else? And how is it possible in certain instances that petrification can happen almost immediately, and in other situations it takes, quote unquote, thousands of years? Is that true? Again, do we know? We do have actual artifacts of, you can tell it's wood and it's now a rock, and some of them become opal. I mean, the stones that we have, that's a whole nother thing. Like, we equate them to certain minerals, but also some of these things, I have a piece of what is called agate, and it looks to me like it was like a heart, like a being's heart that petrified. And so there are conversations about these type of things, but these are the type of things, I mean, we can talk about the hidden history of Sibyls, and we can talk about, you know, things started with the female first, and we can talk about how the indigenous Americans look like me, and they're not from Africa, we're from here. But can we also talk about the giant trees that are pretty much obvious everywhere, and the random pyramids and pyramid-shaped mounds and mountains all over? And then we talk about places like California that's got all this ancient history that's just now coming out, but people have been feeling it for years. This is why it is important. Sure, you can get your books, but this is where the Sibyls come in. This is where these beings, the original beings, where writing even came from, telling these stories, because the land is talking to them. I mean, and it's interesting because I remember riding past those many years ago and just being like, oh, look at those cool mountains. I wonder how those were formed, because I was still under the impression that these were formed from like lava and upliftments. But I can't remember if I watched something about the giant trees. Well, I definitely saw that movie back as a kid, 3-2-1 Contact, and even back then that was supposed to be like a pillar that just kind of rose up of magma. Didn't really make sense. It looks totally like a tree. And then you look up all the stories. It's basically, the story is it's a giant tree, and all those markings are from a bear, a giant bear. So, but yes, I mean, what I'm saying is that part where we were still all under the veil, because all these mountains are actually called Table Rock Mountains, like across the United States. I don't care what state you're in, it's Table Rock. It's Table Rock wherever that is. There's Table Rock in Fresno, there's Table Rock here, there's Table Rock, and there's several Table Rocks in Arizona. I mean, what are, you know, they're telling us. And so I feel like it wasn't until I went to Tucson And the mountains there were like, we are ancient trees. We're old ancient trees. And some of us is like just the outer part of the tree that's still left. And so it looks like these distant mountains. It kind of doesn't make any sense. And then you get to the Grand Canyon, which looks like, I mean, from certain parts of it, an exquisitely gigantic tree chopped down that had like, or like a whole forest that basically, I mean, if that was all made from water and then they find artifacts and these giant tunnels, is that possible those were trees? And the way that the rings are in the sand, I mean, I think everything at this point goes back to the trees. Because then even in the water, like the roots in the water would create a certain air in the water and microorganisms. I mean, and jellyfish that look like sea mushrooms. I know I'm kind of going way off here, but we need to know about these trees. We need to talk about these trees. We need to include this with the awakening, because there's got to be a lot there. There is a lot there. There's a lot there. What else? Yeah, and I think it's been a trick to tell us that we are reptilian, because if you look at, there's all kinds of trees. There's trees that shed their skin. They can bloom and grow all year long, which is called an evergreen, or they can be deciduous, like an oak tree, where they lose all their leaves and they go into their winter sleep. But their skin looks like our skin. Their leaves look like our hair. There's certain parts of trees that do. It looks like our eyes. And then they have these roots that go below the ground that connect to the planet. And then we call something the tree of life. And then our nervous system looks like a tree. And then look, like the rings as you get older. You know, we call them wrinkles, but are they kind of rings? Like on a tree? I know it sounds kind of way off, and it doesn't go with the main dialogue, but this was information Planet has told me, and she just it's more like she has me question these things as I think about them. But yeah, when I took that trip, I'm like, we are driving right past a giant tree stump, but we're not paying any attention because we're on a road and we're going towards, you know, the town and the ocean and that type of thing. But if you're coming in from the ocean, what does that look like, I wonder? Is it a pyramid mound? Is it a tree stump? Did we used to turn trees into pyramids? Is that a possibility also? Because you think about like the chambers in Giza. They go way underground. Was that an earth elemental? Yep, I know it sounds fantastical, but it was the download to share. And then, okay, so we'll relate this to the trees and the sound practice. So we do like whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And we think about air. And when you sing, you are adding something to the vibration of air. And you're connecting to the etheric realm by thoughts connected to the sound, connected to the air. And this is why it's called Hecka, because it's hecka powerful. And Heka is also the name of a goddess. And even when we sing out of tune, we're tuning to something that needs to be tuned. And why do we have a planet called Neptune? Until next time. Hi, everybody. Okay, so that wasn't the end of that video because conveniently, we had a tree taken down by a, tree company. Not we, the owner of the property. And it just kind of added to the video I just did about questioning things. So I'm just gonna kind of go around the already fallen down tree. Now, obviously with this one, the limbs were cut first. So what this company did is they climbed up the tree, cut off limbs all the way up to the very, very top. I wonder what they did with that part. It's not, the very top of the tree isn't here, so we're actually missing about 6 feet. But this tree, this fallen tree, anyways, they took off all the limbs. As you can see, they cut the limbs off, and then they dropped the tree. And when they dropped the tree, they used like a lever, so it didn't just fall from how tall it was, and it was pretty tall. You can see the base right there. So you can, with the base there, you can get kind of an idea. Here, I'll zoom in. There's the base. And as you know, you guys have seen the pictures I've taken of the table rocks near here, and it looks almost exactly the same. And okay, here's the tree. And then you kind of try to stand back so you can see just how far this tree fell. Okay, it's about a ½ acre long, and it's missing 6 feet, so it's definitely a ½ acre long tree. Okay, and then we're going to come to the base of the tree, and I'm also going to show you some of the other trees around here. So I think it's all related. At this point, like, I think my theories are pretty right on. So as you can see, all around the base of the tree. And then in the other video, or the beginning of this video, I talk about how there are notches on this mountain that was driving by, and I'll post pictures and try to like point out the knots in the community. But here's a knot in the tree. This is the actual, it's like, it looks weird, doesn't it? It looks like glass almost. And then all that next to it is sap. And then here's the inside of the bark. Still some of the bark. And then we come up and you can see the rings. This tree is about almost 200 years old, about 150. Then I want you to kind of see the center there where it broke off, and how there's these pieces that are sticking up almost like towns or a little city, right? And then some of the little tiny cracks, right? The cracks, okay. And so I'm going to show you a piece of shale also, not right now, but a piece of shale, and actually let's grab a little piece of bark. Well, this is a good example of, see how it's layered? This is the bark, you guys. See how it's layered? So I find another, that's not layered enough. Let's see. Here's a good example. Here's a good example of a little piece of layered bark from this giant ponderosa, and how it looks. Let's see all the coloring in it. All right. Now I'm going to show you, this is what is called a madrona tree. So that's a ponderosa pine. This is a madrona. This is an actual evergreen. It also gives berries. You can eat the bark. But I wanted you to see the coloring of it, the smoothness of it. And that's just one part of the tree. Look up here. It looks like it's burnt, but it's not. It's its bark. Okay. See that? Isn't that gorgeous, like smooth, almost like skin. Look at that. So smooth and perfect. Okay, let's see. And then I hold up my hand to the tree. And you can see like our fingers, our knuckles look like knot holes. I mean, oh, sorry. Branch, it was a broken down branch, but doesn't this kind of look like a, let's see if I can get, stand so you can see. There we go. Almost looks like a finger, right? Obviously that piece was cut. Stories will say that these trees don't like to be, you know, like cut and manicured. And I found that interesting because there are pieces on this tree. So I'll zoom in. It's hard to tell in this lighting, but that limb doesn't have any leaves on it, but this limb does. But if you look at this limb, where did it go? You can see that it's attached to a part of the tree that does have leaves on it, right? Well, people will cut off those, what they think are dead parts of the tree. But what I've noticed is this tree, sometimes they'll grow back. It's quote unquote dead parts that look like, they look like this. But the rest of the tree looks like this. And then you see all the different colors of the tree. Okay, and so this is a madrona tree. It also gets holes in it. It has weird holes. This hole used to be bigger and lower to the ground. And then I'm going to show you this other madrona tree. You can see they cut a part of it off that they thought was dead, right? But technically, and then you can see there's a little tiny piece of tree growing out just below it. You know how trees do. Even if you cut them down, they grow back. I find trees fascinating. And then I really do think that there's more to us learning about the giant trees than we have been privy to. And so that one has a spider web around it, but I don't want to disturb it. But doesn't it look like it was burned? Even up here, it literally looks like it was burned. It's the tree. And then you can't see inside of it. It goes down about 3 feet. I'm going to show you another one that was cut down, and you can really see how low into the ground it goes. And I've mentioned before that where I live near, oh, I hope that other tree's okay. Yeah, see, that would make a valley. Okay, we're going to get to that part. See what it did to the other tree? And the madronas are pretty hard trees. So this, you know, there you go. That's how long it is. And then here's my hand in comparison to the tree. And that's just, this is a regular, you know, on the ground, we can see it tree. This wouldn't be from one of those giant tree stumps that I've shown you guys. But we can see, you know, and also like dragon skin, right? And we relate like the Great Mother to the dragon as well. So we have the tree of life, and one of my friends mentioned also, why do we call it a family tree? I was like, oh my gosh, I missed that one. Thank you. So thank you. You probably watch this so you know who you are. And then, okay, so now we're going to move into a little different part. Because before I was talked about like pyramids and mound builders, okay? So, when this tree fell, it wasn't, you know, from the very top. They had been lowering it down slowly, and when it fell, it made a huge noise, and a bunch of dust came up. So, I was thinking a giant tree that comes from one of those tree stumps, like the photos I showed you falling, could possibly create a valley, depending on what the ground is like. And then some of these are cut in the shape, like I think someone came and rolled the tree over, maybe. because some of the pieces that were sticking up yesterday aren't really sticking up. But here's a good example. So I did a video not so long ago about pyramid shapes in this area, especially because we're close to Mount Shasta, and it looks like kind of like a pyramid, which this cut kind of looks like a pyramid, right? And it kind of looked like a pyramid, not exactly, but you'd be like, oh, okay. And then the other cut ones, they kind of take on the shape of a pyramid. Did they roll it? I would hope they didn't. Maybe not. So you can see how if a tree fell, and especially that area, which is in the area, if that tree fell south, right? I mean, maybe the tree fell a different way, but we have valleys this way, and then maybe those are, you know, pieces of tree as well as made a valley. And then also, okay, so I said that this tree's pieces were, you know, cut. Well, I'm going to show you some pieces that weren't cut and how they might look like a pyramid. Or, you know, a shape that is more like that. That's definitely a broken off piece. Even this piece broken off. And there's a place near here called Hyatt Lake, and at the top of like the camping area, it's called Table Rock Play Area, and it's literally miles from the Table Rock that I've shown you guys. Okay, so I'm going to pause it and take you to another stump. Okay, as I'm walking, I'm reminded, so here's like pine cones, and I mean, these trees probably had, you know, I mean, whatever we have today is probably like smaller and similar to what we used to have. Can you imagine like the pine cones that would have fell off of these gigantic trees and their branches, and then other trees that were in the way, they would have taken pieces of them down, and these would have all eroded and got petrified. Okay, so my dog wandered off yesterday when we were down here, and this one was cut down probably about 2 years ago. So it's so level to the ground that you can barely tell that there's even a tree stump here. But also, this is after some time. Look at these cracks. I was talking about the Grand Canyon. All right, now we're going to move to another stump. So these stumps are going to show you, oh, okay, so I'll tell you a little bit. Around here, there's also what we have, it's called Crater Lake. And I theorize that it's a broken down tree because of the way it's shaped, and also because they say they can't find the bottom of it. And there's another, I think it's called Crystal Lake in California, that also they can't find the bottom of it. So my theory is that these were giant trees that either were cut down. So like, real quick, this is a piece of another tree, right? The Madrona tree, this tree that broke off as the other tree was coming down. So you can see like some of it looks like it's burnt and dead, but it's literally attached to a living piece that is more brown. But that's what the tree does this. The tree actually changes its own composition to look like it's been burned. I mean, it's freaking flooring. Okay. So I think these were chopped down trees. And the reason why they can't find the bottom is because those were roots. You've heard some of my other videos. And then those roots also, you know, over time disintegrated or broke down and hold like tons of water. I mean, if you've ever been to the Mount Shasta Springs, the springs is not right next to Mount Shasta. I'd say it's about 10 miles. And it's at the bottom of the mountain. And then it just comes out of the rocks. Wouldn't that be an empty root circuit that used to be connected to Mount Shasta? Okay, so we're talking about the lakes. We're going to come to this tree first. So this is an oak tree. Madronas will do the same thing. But this was an oak tree that was cut down about 3 years ago. Look how much it's already, look, it was cut down and it's growing out of itself. 2 new trees. It's like, oh, you're going to cut down 1 tree, I'm going to grow 2 back. And if we left this tree alone forever, this part of the tree would change kind of into something, maybe a lake, and I will show you why. Okay, first of all, look at those awesome designs in the tree. Oops, getting in the light. Really cool designs, right? Okay, the cracks, it looks like they could have been formed by water. The holes that are in it. Then look how deep that goes down. Look at that. That goes way down there. And some squirrels like build a hole. Not build a hole, but created a hole, of course. There we go. You see that? That's about 3, almost 4 feet down. And that's just this tree. Can you imagine a gigantic one? Okay. Then we're going to move into like my desert. I talked about Tucson in the other video. Okay, trip on this, you guys. So, once again, here's the madrona. And look, this wood here, it looks burnt. This tree was not burnt. It has not been burnt. It was not struck by lightning. I mean, maybe it was in a fire when it was younger. That could have been a possibility. But I would have thought this all would have gone away. And it wasn't like this when I chopped it down. So this is why I'm kind of floored by this specific tree, because it does things that are kind of illogical. Not illogical, but not what you would think would happen. Okay, so this used to be a madrona tree. I showed you one a little bit earlier. Now here's what's interesting. Inside of this tree was this very sandy, all these pebbles, little rounded pebbles. And if you've ever been to Southern California, there's these big giant boulders kind of like all over a certain part of the landscape. And I'm like, because you would assume that it was underwater. Maybe. You would assume that these pebbles were underwater. They weren't. They were inside a tree. And then look at this. That's like a little rock that was formed. It's not, here, I'll set this down. It's not hard. I mean, it's hard, but you can break some of the sand off, but it's very deserty looking. Okay? And so does this. Very deserty looking, literally like sand. So, could Tucson have been the center of a giant tree, or Sedona? Because wouldn't they also create vortexes? Like, all this stuff has been going through my mind, you guys. Where in Tucson you have these kind of like mountains that shoot out of kind of nowhere, and then there's desert. There's desert on the inside of it, you know, or all around it, so to speak. Okay, and these little rocks would be gigantic rocks, maybe even in California, and you wouldn't know because you wouldn't be thinking that the mountains were trees. But it would also kind of explain why they would consider plate tectonics, because as the tree is moving or as it fell, it would move and shift things. And then look at the terrain around this one after the squirrel, but it's a completely different terrain. There's like grass at the bottom of the tree, and this is an oak tree. Oh yeah, here's a good. So you see this after it was cut. And I want to find a natural knot, because it looks like our knuckles. I guess that one might be a good one. It's too hard to see. Or is it just because I'm outside? Let's see. Where's my finger? Knuckle. There's my ring. Knuckle? Knuckle? I don't know. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the last stump, because I think it also shows some of the things we talked about. So, amber is supposed to be petrified sap, which if you look at the sap of this, you can see all the colors of amber, all the different colors you find amber in. All right, so see this, see these holes? What are those holes? Where are those holes from? I don't know what those holes are from, but it's very similar to like the mountain that I saw. And then you can see how over time, because when I first got here, this was pretty much completely flat, all the same. But you can see how some of the pieces of the tree have dropped down, like the Grand Canyon. Look at this. Couldn't that be the Grand Canyon? And then, yeah, water coming through it over time. This is why I'm starting to, you know, it's the Great Mother who told me that the planet is more like a tree than anything else, and that we're very connected to trees. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but if you look at these remnants from, I think this tree, it was cut down before I moved here, so it's been here for at least 6 years, if not longer. I'd say longer. But I mean, come over here even and look at how, you know, does that look like part of the Grand Canyon? I mean, and then we find certain places where it's like you find all this amber. Well, wait a minute. Wouldn't that mean there would have had to been a giant tree there? And then as I go and grab a couple pieces of stone, but yeah, those are kind of some of the questions. Like, wait a minute, and I have a minor in anthropology. I have tons and tons of books on stones and geology, and studied geography and geology. And I mean, in basics, like the planet is its own being, right? So it's able to kind of do what it wants with herself in creating, right? But there's some questions. Okay, so I'm going to show you this old stump, because you'll also see like notches in it, holes, the way it's shaped, and the cracks in it, which is another way valleys could have been created. But look at those designs. All right. Okay, that is a piece of petrified wood. Right here. Here's it. And this is just a piece. We don't know how. And it's starting to opalize. It's just starting to opalize. I theorize that opal is ancient tree pieces. But here you go. Here's a piece of, this is what they'll say, this is a piece of petrified wood. It's straight up, right? Like, it looks like wood. Now this is what they call shale. Oh, I left the bark, I left the piece of bark down there. But good grief, this is even starting to opalize. What? Oh my gosh. I gotta show this to my mom. Okay. I'm going to try to make it so you can see the crystals in there, but let's get it wet. Yeah, it's like this rock is smooth right there where the rest is still kind of hard, but let's see if I can find another piece of shale. But I think these look like literally like petrified pieces of bark. I'm taking this inside because I gotta show my mom. Let's see, I don't have any more out here. Yeah, here we go. This is a piece of shale. Okay. See those? Those are layers. Watch, this will break off. Well, I'd have to use a hammer. It's pretty hard, but it's in a layer. You can literally see the layers on this one. The layers. Okay. They're like, it's not a petrified tree. I'm like, I think it is. Another, you know, canyon, crevasse, valley. Okay, you guys. Oh, and then one more of like, oh, so you can see the layers in this fallen over piece of bark. So it's just fallen over. This is a little tiny stump, right? It's fallen over thousands of years. I mean, to me, this literally looks like the shale I just showed you. Look. I think they're similar. That gray color, that kind of black in it, and the rock. All right, you guys. So that's the video for today. A little more on giant trees, trees in general, and my simple evidence to bring the thoughts of the possibilities. Okay, until next time. Do a little elemental. Get the leaves going. There they go. Ooh, oh, hey, oh, mama, ne ma, hey, hey, hey. That was kind of cool. Trees kind of dancing. And I'll do another air elemental soon. And we'll practice bringing in the wind and pushing some stuff away. And just talk more about that. All right, y'all take care until next time.